So how will I truly know the right actions and the right words, even though I feel on a soul level that it's not about the words. And when my friends or people, or even like when people are coming to me or talking to me or asking me these big questions that I feel overwhelmed by, but I'm feeling it very deeply, how do I know what to...
When you have found God in your own heart, and you have reached that point where you are in resonance with God consciousness, your heart will be filled with peace, with joy, with coherence, with clarity, with confidence. You will know how to speak. It will be spontaneously done. There won't even be any ego thinking, what should I say, what should I do? No, everything will happen perfectly in accord with the will of God once you are aligned with that. So what you need to do now is not do anything but meditate and stay here long enough to get to that state and stabilize in it, and then you'll be able to help people wherever they might be who are connected with you and disseminate that energy to everyone. But if you're not in that state yet of stability, you will be contaminated by their anguish and you won't be able to help them. You'll collapse into the same kind of incoherent terror and sadness, and that is not of any service to anyone. So you have to become safe first. Like they say in the airplane, you put the mask on yourself and then you help the child next to you, right? So you've got to have the oxygen of God's love and power, and then you can help others who are strangling because they don't have access to it. But if you are not safe and in God's arms, you're not going to help others to get there. Okay? You're welcome.
Thank you for another wake-up call. I was intrigued by your use of being God's slave. You mentioned that, and I think it's a very interesting concept or understanding that I'd like to hear a little more about. Please.
To be God's slave is the only real freedom. Because what that means is you are entirely at the call of, in the attendance to, and the service of God. You're no longer serving a separate ego. And the more that you do that, the more that you are in union with the one that you are serving, and the intelligence, the love, the power of that one then saturates your own consciousness. You become not different from that source of your being, and it then moves your body. It determines what is spoken. It determines everything that occurs. And it also determines the nature of the dream world in which you find yourself, which will become more godly, more beautiful, more coherent and empowered. So you become an instrument of God's action in the world, and that action is that of transformation. Because the power of God is always to bring beauty and joy into the world. And so if you are entrained with that power and completely at one with it, then that joy becomes your state of joy, and it becomes contagious, and everyone around you is filled with that kind of joyousness. and of creative imagination that enables us to solve problems that otherwise we wouldn't be able to solve. So the ability to think outside the box, to see beyond the illusion of terror and death and horror, to see the beauty, to see the goodness, to understand the blessings, and to be able to activate those latent potentialities of the situation requires you to be in that state in which you can perceive reality at the subtlest possible level that only God can perceive and activate and bring about those potentials to manifest. Okay, so the slave, that's simply a metaphor for being totally and absolutely in every moment in the receptivity of God's presence until the non-duality of who you might think you are and God become realized as a single whole. Okay, thank you. Okay, no more questions? There's one, Tara.
Thank you, Shunya, for the class. I think the main thing that stood out tonight was when you said if we're not in the changeless, then the changes around us will create the chaos. And I feel like we're very blessed within the ashram because the external world doesn't change so much. It's only when you start reading the news or go to town or that you really are affected by them. But I don't want to rely on that because I feel like it can be like a bit of a buffer that I'm in this kind of protective little environment, but I understand that's not enough. So it's kind of it's more of a confession than a question, that I realize I want to make sure that I'm really taking the blessing of being here because I recognize it's an absolute gift. But do I really use it do I use all my time to make sure I'm reaching the changeless? And I realize I don't. So I appreciate the Declaration of Independence you wrote in tonight's class as a reminder and a prompt.
Okay, well, thank you, Tara. And I would say that your honesty and ability to realize what you just expressed is a huge step toward being able to activate your higher consciousness and attain that immovable point at the very center of your consciousness. When you want it, you will be given it. Okay, you just have to really want it. And that means you no longer want to be on the periphery and the surface of your life, but you want to find your center, your power, your source of being, and live from that. And that is the greatness that wants to come out, that is yearning to be fully able to express itself through your mind and your body and your life. And that's who you really are. And so by giving yourself permission to live in that level of empowerment, it will happen very easily. You just have to want it and to know that that is the part you are called to play in this drama of the world that is now coming to its final climactic scene of the Deus ex machina, in which God must emerge from the machinery of the bodies and the matrix to be revealed to everyone as the truth of our nature. And you can be a beautiful avatar of that divine grace and goodness and lead the morphogenetic transformation of the field of human consciousness into the divine through your own giving yourself the right to play that exalted role on this stage.